Hey everyone, Serien here. Welcome back to Necrobarista. In our last episode, Kishan is trying his best to process his untimely death and is offered a very boozy drink. A mysterious figure appears outside in the rain, and we meet Ned, who I'm assuming is a member of the Council of Death. He's come to collect on the cafe's debt. He finds out that the ownership has been passed on to Maddie, and now she's the one that's got to pay up. So, let's continue. That was kind of intense. Do they do that often? The song and dance thing? Yeah, what do they think they are? Some sort of anime street gang? What sort of self-obsessed jerk has their own theme song? Don't be a downer, pal. No, I was talking about the dramatic encounter. Oh, between Maddie and Ned? Yes. Yeah, they've got chemistry. Not the romantic kind, the explosive kind. Can't leave them in the same room together, or they'll kill each other. Bad history? Maddie's just a serially troublesome person, from Ned's perspective. It doesn't help that she can't stop herself from pulling pranks on him. No, I suppose not. I mean, he doesn't make it easy either. I don't think he's used to having his authority questioned. She really gets under his skin. Wasn't he a famous criminal? And therein lies the irony of the situation. What a strange world we live in. Who are those robots? Are they just watching all these events unfold? Are they like the chorus in this story? Alright. Okay, let's choose some words, I guess. Housemates? Storm? Dog's dinner? Cuppa? Expiry? Bourbon? Yes. And stressed. Let's see what this gets us. Okay. Oh, that's a lot of food. Oh no. I might have screwed up here. Okay, food and death. That's good. We definitely need to unlock some more of those things, so we might have to be careful on what we choose. Here we are. Oh, we're on the top floor now. What are these pressure valves for? Plenty of plants. A lot of plants. Whoa! Okay. I've got a huge library. Billiards 1. Okay, I want to look around a little bit. Delicate operation. Maddie's inbox. Cute. Oh my god, cute. They got little plants on every table. Is there anything else out here? This place looks pretty cool. Alright, let's see. Maddie's inbox. What do we need? What about you? Ah, jeez. We need one more for that. Yeah, we didn't have a really good pick of words. This we can unlock. Delicate operation. And we can also unlock billiards. Brad took a sip of his beer. What is this about? This one's about Ashley and Maddie. Okay. Think I want to check that out. Let's do it. Ashley stepped behind the counter and winced as the floor creaked under her feet. Maddie was nowhere to be seen, but Maddie did possess a remarkably sharp sense of hearing. Luckily, the cafe was empty as Ashley tiptoed to the case where Maddie kept the baked goods. Uh-oh. Ashley lifted the glass lid off the case and closed her eyes as the scent of yesterday's lamingtons wafted up and overwhelmed her. What the heck are lamingtons? Oh. Tasty. Ashley had spent most of her life convinced that she didn't like coconuts, but that had changed the day that Che introduced her to lamingtons. To be fair, Ashley still wasn't sure that she actually liked coconut. Chocolate frosting could make anything taste good, but she couldn't deny the cake's irresistible allure. Ashley lifted a lamington from the case and gently set the lid back down. She raised lamington to her lips and opened her mouth to take a bite. Ashley? In a moment of panic, Ashley shoved the pastry into her mouth and sealed her lips. Her mouth was quickly overwhelmed by the pastry's thick frosting covering, and she did her best to choke it down before turning to face Maddie. Said Ashley, hoping that her cheeks didn't betray what was inside. Ah, good, you're here, said Maddie. It was a bad sign anytime Maddie expressed pleasure at seeing Ashley. Normally, Maddie wavered between being annoyed by Ashley's presence and being indifferently intolerant of her. Anytime Maddie was happy to see Ashley, it meant work. I need you to deliver something to Che for me, said Maddie, turning to the counter to pick up a small bottle of something. As Maddie turned her attention to the bottle, Ashley took advantage of her momentary distraction to gulp down the remainder of the pastry. No time to chew, but her teeth wouldn't have done much good with a thick frosting. You're not busy, are you? Said Maddie. Ashley shook her head no. The pastry is no longer inside her mouth to create a conspicuous bulge of cheeks, but opening her mouth would reveal the thick chocolate frosting that was still probably present on her teeth, so she kept her lips sealed. Good, said Maddie. He's upstairs. Get this to him ASAP. She handed the bottle to Ashley, and Ashley found herself surprised by how light the bottle was. Looking down, she could see that the bottle had thin walls. Within those thin walls, it contained some clear liquid, and its seal was held in place with a metal clamp, hermetically sealed. Ashley turned toward the stairs, holding the neck of the bottle in one hand, and let out a sigh. One last thing. Ashley swallowed her sigh with a gulp, and closed her mouth before facing Maddie, lips tightly shut. Be careful not to drop it, said Maddie. Thousands could die if you spill any of it. Jeez. In any other situation, Ashley would have asked Maddie a probing question to figure out what was in the bottle, or get some idea of the significance of the task that had been assigned to her. Significant enough that thousands of lives held in the balance, but apparently not important enough for Maddie to do it herself. But Ashley's lips remained sealed, and she merely nodded and turned around. Lamingtons were not meant to be consumed in a single bite, especially by mouths as small as Ashley's, and the thickness of the frosting that lingered in her mouth and throat made her desperate to ask for some kind of drink, but she dared not to ask for one. Ashley looked down at the bottle, unsure of the best way to carry it. The bottle was slightly too large for her to hold in just one hand, and grasping it in front of her with two hands felt awkward. The bottle wasn't heavy, but Ashley's confidence in her ability to carry the bottle without dropping it was less than perfect. Should she cradle it under her arm protectively? No, that seemed like it put her at greater risk of fumbling the bottle. The crook of her elbow wasn't as dexterous as her fingertips. She settled for carrying the bottle with one hand, and placed under the bottom to hold the weight, and the other hand wrapped around the neck to steady it. Ashley walked slowly with the bottle as she ascended the stairs. Maddie hadn't told her that the liquid was volatile and the bottle was hermetically sealed, so there was zero chance of anything spilling out, but that didn't change the sense of trepidation Ashley felt. Armed with the knowledge that there were potentially thousands of lives at stake, she cringed every time she saw the liquid sloshing inside the bottle, leaping up and lapping at the edge of the seal. Ashley realized her arms were shaking and pressed the bottle against her chest, hoping to steady it. As Ashley's hands shook nervously with the bottle held against her chest, she wondered if the large amount of sugar she had just forced down her throat had something to do with the shaking. It was more likely that the shaking was the result of being told that thousands of lives could be lost if she dropped the bottle. That is a heavy weight for a child to bear, literally. Still, the lingering taste of the pastry in her mouth didn't help. Ashley silently lamented the fact that she'd been forced to consume the lamingtons so abruptly. Lamingtons were a treat to be savored, not shoved into one's mouth in a moment of panic. She hadn't even had the chance to properly enjoy it. It was hard to simultaneously feel the pleasure of a tasty treat and the panic of being caught. Whatever the outcome of this errand, she had wasted a wonderful pastry. Several agonizing minutes later, Ashley arrived at the top of the stairs and spotted Che standing at the handrail. As she walked up, Che turned to face her, and she presented him with a bottle. Ashley cleared her throat of any lingering stickiness before speaking. Maddie said you needed this. Ah, good, said Che. I was running low. Ashley gasped with relief as Che took the bottle from her and started taking deep, labored breaths, suddenly becoming aware of how high her heart rate was. Che popped open the seal on the bottle and splashed some of it onto a rag. Several drops dripped on the floor, and Ashley let out a terrified squeak. Something wrong? Said Che. Maddie said that thousands of lives could be destroyed by what's in that bottle. Well, that's the idea, said Che, as he folded the rag and ran along the railing that overlooked the cafe's ground level. This is supposed to kill 99.9% of all bacteria. That still leaves hundreds of bacteria alive, but I try not to think too hard about that part. Ashley's jaw dropped. It's disinfectant? Yeah, said Che. Why, did Maddie not tell you? Oh my god. Ashley's shoulders slumped in a mix of relief and exasperation. She only told me that it could kill thousands. And you didn't ask what she meant by that? No, said Ashley. I was preoccupied. Huh, said Che. He turned his attention back to the railing, inspecting it for a moment before continuing to wipe it. Ashley turned to head backstairs. By the way, Ashley? Ashley turned to face Che. He reached out and placed a finger on her shirt, wiping off a bit of frosting. He raised it to his finger and smelled it. Chocolate? He said. Yes, said Ashley. One of Maddie's lamingtons? Yes, said Ashley. Che nodded and licked the frosting off his finger. Go downstairs and bring one up for me too, will ya? Cute. Oh my gosh, okay. Maddie really knows how to mess with Ashley. Okay, well, can we just go downstairs? But that's how I continue. Is there another? Billiards, right? Ah. Okay, well, let's read this one then. I don't know what these stories are, but I guess they're pretty cool. Billiards. Brad took a sip from his beer. It was non-alcoholic, but there was something about the taste that put him in the perfect state of ease and alertness. Maybe it was the placebo effect. Maybe it was the fact that his non-alcoholic beer was still 0.5% ABV, and he was on his 5th bottle. Maybe it was the dry aftertaste that kept him frosty. Brad chased the thoughts from his head as he leaned over the table and lined up his next shot. He eyed the problematic 9-ball in the upper right corner. He had a low percentage shot on it if he elected to bank it in, but he had 2 other stripes in the lower left to set it up. If he had an audience, he'd go for the bank shot for sure. While Brad was a competitive player, a big part of what he liked about competition was the chance to shine. But today there was no one to impress, no audience for his flashy, low percentage shots. He took the shots on the 11 and 12, and 3 shots later, the 9 was sunk, with an easy shot on the 8-ball to seal the deal. Brad scanned the table. 4 solids remained, a dismal performance on his part. Or a stellar performance on the part of the Stripes player, depending on how you looked at it. That was the problem with playing against yourself. You always won, but you always lost too. Every crowning victory was also a crushing defeat, and every defensive shot was an attempt to screw yourself. Brad chugged the remainder of his beer and added the glass bottle to his collection of empties, which now stood at 5 bottles strong. He took a moment to survey the room. It was empty. His table was the only one of 4 that was in use. That didn't come as any surprise to Brad. It was early in the evening, and he had grown accustomed to spending time alone in this room, knowing instinctively when he could come here to be alone, and what hours the other sharks showed up. Brad grabbed the triangle. It was looped around his collection of beer bottles, and started putting the balls in order for another round. Someone came up the stairs, and Brad looked up briefly, long enough to see a woman who he recognized as the one who had served him the beers that had kept him in company for the past hour or 2. Each time he'd gone downstairs to order another beer, she had a serious, almost stern expression, but over the past several visits to the bar, he'd come to like her presence. He was used to servers who attempted to flatter him, and yet this woman didn't so much as smile at him. But there was something in the way she declined to comment on his choice of non-alcoholic beer that made her seem like one of the least judgmental servers he'd ever met, and somehow that made him feel more welcome than the warmest smile a server could offer. Several steps behind the woman, he saw an older-looking man. The old man stopped in front of one of the tables, the one opposite Brad's, and began chalking up his cue. The barista set the wooden box of balls on the table in front of him, and she began placing the triangle on the table before the old man waved her away. Brad directed his attention to the old man. Brad usually offered people a game when they came up, but the old man seemed like he was prepared to keep to himself, so Brad said nothing and tried to focus on his own table. He set out to break, and the old man coughed right in the middle of Brad's stroke. He hit the cue ball just a fraction of a degree off center, and it bounced off the rack into one of the side pockets as the rest of the balls jostled around the table. Stink. Brad didn't swear when he played pool. The habit had been ground out of him early on when he started playing competitively in youth league. His earliest experiences with competitive billiards had been in an environment that forbade obscenities and issued foul penalties every time he let out an involuntary shit or fuck, so he'd have to find cleaner substitutes. The swears he'd grown up with were still part of his everyday vocabulary, but leaning over the pool table was enough to put him in the competition mindset. Brad turned around and looked at the man, wondering if he had heard Brad. If the man had heard, he certainly didn't show it. The geezer was lined up and making several practice strokes, getting ready to break his own table. Brad turned back to his own table and tried to divorce his attention from the old man. Still, it was impossible to avoid hearing the clacking of balls on the other side, and he found himself subconsciously counting the knocks every time he heard the cue ball strike. Break, came the sound from the old man's table. 2, 3, 4. Brad put down his break cue and picked up the leather-tipped cue that was leaning against the table. 5, 6. Brad chalked his cue, trying to avoid the tilt from his bad break. 7, 8. Brad lined up to shoot and realized that the old man was clearing his table, fishing the balls out of the pockets, and collecting them in the triangle. Brad did a mental double take. Had the old man sunk the 8 ball after 8 strokes including break? Brad continued playing his own table, but kept an eye on the old man this time, as best as he could without looking like he was staring. It happened again. Break. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A perfect clean sweep. As the old man began clearing the table, Brad walked over and piped up. "Excuse me," he said, "but I couldn't help but notice you just hit 2 perfect games." "What's that?" The old man turned to Brad, squinting at him. Brad repeated himself, a bit louder this time. "I was just complimenting you on 2 perfect games. Impressive stuff." The old man heaved his shoulders, in a gesture that looked more like a sigh than a struggle. "Sometimes you got a bit of luck on your side," said the man. Brad found himself annoyed by the old man's inability to accept the compliment. That kind of humility had always struck him as somehow dishonest. "Still," said Brad, "you won't see a novice hit 2 consecutive perfect games. You need some amount of skill to pot every ball like that." The old man offered another ineffectual shrug. "Do you, want to play a game?" Brad gestured to his own table, which was already set up. "Most of the people who come around here tend to be novices. I've been kind of itching for a bit of competition." Brad paused, and the old man said nothing. Of course, if you prefer to play on your own table, I don't mean to intrude." "We can play," said the old man. "Though if I shoot perfect the 3rd time, you won't get to." "If you could pull that off, I'd be impressed," said Brad. The old man racked the balls and after a bit of jostling, stepped away from the table to let Brad break. Brad leaned over the table and took several practice strokes before finally connecting with the cue ball. The break was weaker than he had expected, but he managed to sink 1 ball, which was enough to start his spree. Still, the break was barely legal. Brad looked at the table with a bit of annoyance and realized that he hadn't bothered to check to see if the rack was frozen before he broke. It was probably the old man's failing eyesight, racking the balls by feel rather than sight. Sometimes it made it impossible to miss small gaps between the balls. Brad lined up his next shot, which was a straight into the middle pocket. He briefly visualized the trajectory of the cue ball in his mind. He would knock the 6th ball in easily, and then bounce toward the front of the table. Brad wasn't confident of where exactly the ball would stop, but he was confident that regardless of its position, he'd be able to do something with it. He took the shot, and the 6th ball went in. Solids. After the cue ball settled, he found himself with no good options. Brad smiled. Most other players in this situation might be cringing, but Brad saw this as a challenge. Making something out of nothing was his specialty, and after several moments of eyeing different angles, he settled on a shot towards one of the bottom pockets. One of the straight balls was in the way, so Brad hit the cue ball several degrees to the side, giving it just enough spin to curve its trajectory around the striped ball. It hit the solid 3 ball at just the right angle, and the shot was made. Brad looked at the old man, hoping for some kind of reaction. The old man's mouth remained a flat line, but Brad could see his eyebrows arch. Even if the reaction was subtle, Brad could tell that he had made an impression. If anything, the lack of obvious expression on the old man's face struck him as a deliberate attempt to not show a reaction, which made the fact that he had managed to get a slight rise out of the old man feel like an even sweeter victory. Brad made his next shots quickly. He had an easy straight-in shot on the 2 ball, and he made it without thinking much about where the cue ball would land, convincing himself that was a problem that future Brad would have to deal with. The 2 ball entered its pocket without putting up much of a fight, and several seconds later, present Brad found himself scolding past Brad for putting him in such a foul position. He was corner hooked, with a cue ball trapped in the nook next to the corner pocket. The only angles available to Brad existed in a 60-degree arc, a drastically tighter window than his usual 360-degree array of options. Still, after surveying his limited options, he breathed a sigh of relief as a relatively straightforward bank shot presented itself. It was an awkward angle, but Brad was sure that he could coax the 3-ball into the opposite corner pocket. He took the shot and watched as the 3-ball complied, helpfully rolling into the pocket he had designated. Unfortunately, the cue ball went with it, ending Brad's turn and placing the ball in the old man's possession. Nah, stink. The old man fished the cue ball out of its pocket, and Brad could swear he saw the man wink at him before placing the cue ball down, lining up a simple shot on the side pocket. He took the shot, and the 9 went in, then the 11 and the 12. As Brad observed each shot, he found himself taking it for granted that the striped ball would enter its designated pocket, and instead focus on the cue ball. Somehow, the cue ball always wound up in a position that presented the oldster with the ideal chip shot. Ball after ball fell off the bed, until finally only the black 8-ball and Brad's solid colored balls remained. Fortunately for Brad, the 8-ball and the cue ball were at opposite sides of the table, with several of Brad's striped balls in between. The cue ball had always seemed to wind up in a position where it offered a shot to one of the geezer's balls, and Brad had found himself wondering whether it was a careful planning on the old man's part, or just a streak of good luck. The fact that the man seemed to be without any easy options made it seem like perhaps he wasn't the amazing planner that Brad had originally made him out to be, and at last the old man's luck had run out at the moment he needed it most. The old man wore a contemplative expression as he walked around the table, inspecting different angles. He lined up several different shots, but didn't commit to any of them. As the old man searched for a good shot, Brad mentally calculated what he would do if he were the one trapped in this situation. If he ricocheted this cue ball after 2 of the solids, he could hit the 8-ball at the right angle. Or if he had put enough spin on the cue ball to curve it around the stripes, he could probably get the 8-ball in it without having to bank it. Still, those were options that required a lot of dexterity and control. The dexterity and control that the old man probably lacked. It wasn't an issue of the man's age. Even a young pool player with steady hands would have trouble making one of those shots. The old man eventually gave up and settled for making a defensive shot that put the cue ball behind the 8-ball. Now the tables were turned. Brad was the one cut off from his balls by a problematic 8-ball. Brad smiled. He lived for shots like this. He lined up a shot and visualized the trajectory of the ball head, but there was really no way for him to perfectly predict how things would go. He just knew, as if by instinct, that if he hit the 8-ball at this angle, good things would happen. He took the shot. The cue ball hit the 8-ball, and the 8-ball hit the 1-ball, and the 1-ball hit the 7-ball, bouncing it in against the front of the table, and back into one of the side pockets. Brad smiled. Things could have gone better if he'd planned them, though in a way, he was sure that his subconscious mind had been expecting things to work out like this, instinct and muscle memory doing what the calculating mind couldn't. Now that the table was conveniently free of striped balls, Brad had no trouble sinking the remaining consecutive shots he needed to close out the game. As Brad lined up the final shot, one of the 8-balls, Brad studied the old man, looking for some kind of reaction. If the old man was responding, he couldn't tell. Brad closed his eyes as he completed this final stroke, as he always did. He wasn't really religious. He had stopped going to church with his mom when he was 12 years old, but somehow it felt right to complete the game with his eyes closed, as if he were lifting some prayer and leaving the result of the game to God. "Damn," said the old man, as the 8-ball fell into its pocket. Brad flinched for a moment. Nothing about the man's behavior up to that point has indicated he was impressed with Brad's abilities, but for some reason he had been expecting a bit of praise from the man for winning the game. Perhaps a damn was all that he was prepared to offer. "Excuse me," said Brad. "I don't think we bothered to exchange names." "I'm Brad." "Thomas," The old man extended a hand. "I've gotta say," said Brad, "you're quite a player. I take it you're not from around here?" "No," said the man. "I grew up in Brisbane, retired in Sydney. I'm just passing through." The young man nodded. "I figured. I actually grew up in this neighborhood. I played on tables just like these way back when I was a kid, so I know most of the people who are on the local competitive circuit. I guess someone like you would have to play competitively, huh? You don't pick up skills like that in a tiny pond." "You'd be surprised," said Thomas. "A man can accomplish quite a bit when given enough idle time." But you have played competitively, I assume," said Brad. "I used to, yes," said Thomas. "I actually formally retired many years ago, but kept the table at home for practice to keep my mind sharp." "Where did you compete?" said Brad. "Oh, I toured in England," said Thomas. "Wait," said Brad. "You were a pro? I'm assuming this man is no longer alive." "A pro is someone who makes a salary," said Thomas. "In the end, I won enough to cover my travel expenses, and enough to make up for the time I spent not working a real job." Brad was visibly excited. "You said England. Did you ever play in the WBC?" "Yep," said the old man. "I played the WBC for a few years. Eventually, I decided the title was a summit I'd never reach, so I quit." "Wait," said Brad. "Are you Thomas Walsh?" "Indeed I am," said Thomas. "You're a legend," said Brad. "I think you might be overstating it," said Thomas. "Even when I was at my prime, I wasn't the best. Results speak for themselves." "Nah, fuck that," said Brad. "You're a finalist for 6 years running. Nobody's ever been that consistent. Even the best pros who manage to run hot burn out after more than 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's really common to see guys who spike events and then fail to even qualify the next year." Brad paused, wavering a bit before throwing in a bit of humble self-aggrandizement. "I mean, that's a big problem. It's been a big problem for me." Thomas sipped his beer. Whether he deliberately was choosing to ignore Brad's comment, or simply hadn't taken notice, wasn't clear. "I've spent hundreds of hours watching your videos," said Brad. "I didn't realize there were videos of me," said Thomas. "I have the finals tapes from 1967 and 1968, said Brad. "They didn't record them before that, but your last 2 years got recorded for posterity. They're kind of rarities at this point, though. I had a coach who had a vault of old footage. That's how I got my hands on your videos." "Coach?" Thomas arched an eyebrow. "Yeah," said Brad. "Did you ever have a coach?" Thomas shook his head. "We mostly just taught ourselves, and taught each other. Sometimes you gotta practice with people better than you were, but they weren't really coaches to teach you how to play." "Well, I mostly taught myself," said Brad. "But after I started winning from some regionals, I joined a team so I could get sponsored and have a group to train with." "Interesting," said Thomas. Brad waited for Thomas to question further, but no question came. Brad decided to continue without an invitation. "I won the WBC in 2012. "No luck since then, I take it," said Thomas. Brad stammered for a moment, unsure of how to respond. "Well, yeah. Like I said, I've had some events where I managed to run hot, but I've never been a consistent player. Not like you, anyway." Brad offered a sheepish grin. My mom had an album full of clippings of all these articles talking about me like I was some kind of prodigy, the next big thing. Now it feels like I'll forever be a footnote in history. Brad waited for the words of affirmation to come from his hero, but Thomas just took another drink from his glass, finishing it off before setting it down on the table, next to Brad's empty bottles. Said Brad. Can I get you a drink in exchange for another game? It would be a real pleasure. Sure, said Thomas. Get me a Guinness. Actually, make it two. Brad rushed down the stairs and returned several minutes later with a tray bearing 2 pints of Guinness and 2 more NAs for himself. Thomas began setting up the table for the next game, and Brad hovered over him. You know, said Brad, this place is pretty magical. I mean, getting to play a game of pool. I never imagined this would happen, but in a place like this. He wasn't quite sure how to say it, but figured Thomas knew what he was gesturing at. Several moments later, Brad finished the thought, just to kill the silence. I mean, this is the sort of place where anything can happen. You know what I'm saying? Not anything, said Thomas. There are limits. Well, yeah, said Brad. But still, 2 former champs. One coming back from, from beyond the grave, so to speak. That's not the kind of encounter you'd expect to have anywhere else. Thomas arched his eyebrows. Magical indeed. When I walked up here, I didn't realize from looking at you that you were, well, he rubbed his chin. Oh. So they both passed on. Well, let's just say that I don't meet a lot of pool pros at bars. One hell of a coincidence that it would be at the night I'm here. He took a sip of his beer. You want a break? Break? Said Brad. Thomas gestured to the configuration of balls on the table. Oh, right, said Brad. Sure. He took a moment to inspect the pyramid. The rack was nice and tight. Had it been like that for the first game? Brad wondered if perhaps his senses were failing him. He broke, and with hands guided by instinct, managed to sink 5 balls consecutively. Like magic, his shots always managed to connect, even the tricky ones that involved curves and bounces. Brad found himself smiling. Some people might buckle under pressure, but Brad's performance always seemed to rise to the occasion. And now that he was presented with the opportunity to impress his mentor, every shot seemed to go in. With just 2 striped balls left, Brad knew he was on a streak, but as he lined up the shot on one of the striped balls, he took a moment to consider the position of the 8 ball. He was nestled in an awkward position behind Thomas's balls, but if he could clear a path to the 8 ball while sinking the last stripe, it was definitely doable. Brad looked at the sea of balls and knew there was no way for him to mentally calculate exactly how they knock around once the cue ball hit them, but instinct had got him in this far, and he wasn't about to stop listening to it now. Whatever the result was, he'd figure it out. Brad took the shot, and as predicted, the cue ball knocked the last striped ball into the corner pocket. The cue ball bounced off the table, back towards Thomas's cluster of balls, and hit one, which hit another, and another, which hit the 8 ball. Brad found himself grinning in elation. He'd hit the 8 ball, and it was headed right toward the corner, just like he'd predicted. He was headed right toward the corner where there were no balls to intercept it. He was headed right toward the corner into the pocket. The 8 ball slowed down, but Brad felt a sinking feeling as he knew that the friction of the table wouldn't be enough to stop it from going in. As the 8 ball rolled toward the pocket, Brad felt an overwhelming sense of dread. He was fully aware of this impending disaster, yet powerless to stop it. The game had been going so well up until that moment. He had been about to hit a perfect game in front of his childhood hero, and now was about to lose it in the most inglorious way imaginable. Brad closed his eyes and looked away from the table. He didn't need to see it. The sound of the ball plunking into the pocket was enough to tell him that he'd just lost the game. Thomas began pulling the balls from the pockets, and Brad turned back to the table to rack the balls. Moving balls around the table seemed a good way to distract himself from the embarrassing loss. Brad lifted the triangle from the table and presented the pyramid to Thomas. Well, that was quite a story. So I guess encounters like that happen pretty often. Okay, so we can unlock this without actually having any of these symbols, so let's read this. "You're overdue this week," said Ned. He tapped the list of rules that Maddie kept posted by the door. "This 24-hour rule? Are you sure you've been enforcing it?" "I think how we run things around here is none of your business," said Maddie. "Actually, it absolutely is my business," said Ned. "In fact, keeping the rules is basically my only business. That's kind of what the word enforcer means. I'm supposed to scold you for breaking the rules. So audit me." "Fine," said Ned. "Let me check your ledger." We don't keep a ledger," said Maddie. "Maybe you should," said Ned. "Lots of places do. It's a great system. You have someone stand at the door and have them mark down whenever someone comes in or leaves. Then you forcibly evict people who are overstaying their welcome. I'm amazed that you don't have a system like that in place." "Some people overstay their welcome, other people understay it," said Jay. "There's no need to strictly keep track of how long people stay, right? Just maintain the balance." "You're right," said Ned. "All that matters is maintaining the balance. So maintain the balance, because when you don't, then we have a problem." "We're a bit short-staffed to have someone acting as a full-time doorman," said Maddie. "Figure it out," said Ned. He tapped the board listing the rules. "Change 24 hours to 23 hours. When you say 24 hours, people just think you just colloquially mean one day, and they don't pay attention to the specific time. When you say 23 hours, people actually have to keep track of what time it is." "That would be fine," said Jay, "except for the part where you're cutting time if people stay." "Trust me," said Ned. "Anyone who would go right up to the limit is probably going to go over it. 23 hours is going to mean 23 hours, plus an extra 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour, plus however long it takes to finish their drink. And if they leave in less than 24 hours, who gives a shit?" "I give a shit," said Jay. "You're right, you should give a shit," said Ned. "In fact, you should celebrate whenever you manage to scoot someone out of here in under 24 hours, because the balance is upset and you've got to correct it. You can either correct the balance 1 hour at a time, or the council can come in here and repossess some souls. Or we can find someone who knows how to manage this property responsibly." He turned to Jay. "Come on, buddy. I don't want to have to take this place away from you." "That would be quite the escalation," said Maddie. "Well, you're already on the first level escalation, which is a stern talking to," said Ned. "Let's not try to escalate it any further." Jay sighed. Maddie cut him off. "We'll change the rule to 23 hours, okay? Buzz off." "Wow, really?" said Ned. "Well, okay then. And while you're rewriting the signs, you should also take the green tea frappuccino off the menu. Frapp should be for coffee, not tea." "Hey, I like green tea frappuccinos, though." "Done," said Maddie. "Wait, really?" said Ned. "Damn, I didn't realize you were so open to feedback. Also, that caramel." "We'll take it under advisement," said Maddie, placing a hand on Ned's chest and physically pushing him toward the door. Hold up," said Ned. "What are you doing?" "Removing an unwanted guest," said Maddie. "I need the practice if we're gonna start enforcing those rules you care so much about." "No, said Ned as he continued backpedaling to stay upright. "Look, you could just..." "Bye," said Maddie as Ned crossed the threshold out of the cafe and Maddie shut the door in his face. She turned around, leaning her back against the door and sighed. Jay raised an eyebrow. You're serious about the rule change? Yeah, said Maddie. I'll change the sign in the menu after we close tonight. Wait, really? The rule change is just to keep him off our bag, said Maddie. And the menu thing? I've been meaning to take that off anyway, said Maddie. It's the kind of menu item that attracts the worst sort of people. Well, okay, said Jay. Though, I do think we should change the rule back to 24 hours after things have had enough time to balance out. Of course, said Maddie. Wouldn't want to upset the balance too far in the opposite direction. What would we do with all that extra time anyway? Interesting, so do they get more time if all the guests leave a little early? Yeah, let's continue. Day 2, 12 p.m., the terminal. Rise and shine. Don't wanna... You shouldn't waste your last hours on Earth sleeping. Man, I was hoping that I was having a really long, weird dream. Sorry, no such luck. I'm still having trouble getting my head around it. I totally understand. Want a coffee? Yeah. Just something simple. Hipster coffee, coming right up. What's going on downstairs? I didn't even know you had a downstairs. There's more to this place than meets the eye. Maddie's down there, desperately trying to fix our debt situation. It sounds like she's hosting a cage match or something. Well, not exactly. But she's mentioned wanting to do that. There's some wrestler called the Red Comet that she wouldn't stop talking about for a while. And then because of that, Ashley gets obsessed with wrestling for a bit and kept trying to suplex me. Oh my god. Did she manage to? She's tiny. A couple of times. Oh my gosh, beat up by a 6-year-old. Ha! It was very humiliating. I can imagine. But to properly answer your question, Maddie's running a gambling ring. Gambling? You find yourself standing on the brink of death. A wager could be a chance at salvation, or a last chance to feel danger. Huh. Downstairs? All by yourself? It's a fairly unconventional one. And by unconventional, you mean mortals generally aren't involved. The stakes are higher than usual. Oh. Coffee's ready. Come over and get it. They gamble for time, among other things. You don't sound like you're a huge fan of the idea. I'm not. It's undignified. I mean, as long as Maddie's not in danger, shouldn't it be fine? The council doesn't like it. They turned a blind eye because we don't cause trouble otherwise. But I'd rather not have to worry about bad things coming our way. Because Maddie refuses to approach the problem from a different angle. And by the problem, you mean the debt, right? I was pretty drunk, but I think I remember Maddie storming off after Ned turned up. Yeah. I'm a bit worried about her. Wish I could help. You all seem pretty nice. The thought's appreciated. Maddie will figure it out eventually, though, I'm sure. She just needs time. Hey, thanks for the coffee, by the way. I just realized you haven't actually made me pay for a bunch of them. How'd you expect to pay for them? Oh, right. Yep, no cash. If I were feeling particularly capricious, I'd ask you to pay in time. But you're a nice kid, and you need every minute you've got. How many minutes do you have left anyway? You want to head downstairs? I can see your eyes darting to the stairs. I'm not going down, but I'm also not going to stop you. Yeah, if that's okay. Go on then, I'll stick around up here. Catch you in a bit. Oh god, what unholy things are going on downstairs. The stairs that led down to the basement were solid and well worn, with smooth ruts on each step and a handrail that had been polished to a silky sheen through years of use. Kishan had always liked stairwells. People never lingered in them for long, and he found them to be a good place to catch a breather. He wasn't obsessed with them. That'd be weird. But he definitely appreciated a nice set of stairs. On further reflection, it was probably a little weird. Downstairs, Maddie's audience clamored for blood. From you to me. With the understanding that your remaining moments on this plane are limited, you surrender this time freely without coercion, as agreed. What? Contract fulfilled. You're free to go. Everything comes at a price, nothing risked, nothing gained. Phew. What is this? That's 3 in a row, you bloodthirsty bastards. The crowd cheered. Maddie was clearly an expert at winding them up into a frenzy. Who's next? The room fell dead silent. Come on, isn't anyone here brave enough to challenge me? I thought you came here to play with knives, you pansies. Seriously? Anyone? Don't hold out on me. Do I need to pick someone out from the crowd then? Is this what we've come to? Maddie's gaze swept the audience. Kishan, good to see you upright. Interested in a game of skill? Me? Yes, you. Oh, sure. Give me some enthusiasm, my man. Sure. What's the game? 5-finger fillet. Some of the people in here just call it the knife game. Oh no. Not the fingies. You heard of it? Oh, finally, something I'm good at. Episode 3. Rise and Shine. I guess Kishan is familiar with the knife game. You've got a lot of knives in this place. Tell me about it. Damn, this thing has a good weight to it. Of course, I wouldn't make you compete with an inferior tool. What? Sorry, I was waiting for you to segue into calling me an inferior tool. Shit, that was low-hanging fruit, wasn't it? Next time, mate. Sure. Kishan did another experimental slash, and this time it made an audible whoosh. The spectators oohed and awed. But this wasn't for them. He knew that he only had one shot to get accustomed to the blade. Ooh. You done showing off? Nothing wrong with putting on a little show. Sounds like you're stalling for time. Getting cold feet, perhaps? Not a chance. Let's get started then. You know what you're wagering? Jay mentioned something about you gambling with time. It's not gambling if it's a game of skill. But that's besides the point. We're both wagering for 4 hours. If you win, it comes from the cafe's balance. If I win, it comes from yours. You've got around 16 hours left in case you weren't keeping track. Shit, only that many? Want a little extra time to play with then? Hell yes. Let's stop wasting it and get this over with. You sure you know what you're getting into? Most people are pretty shy about playing with the time they have left, especially when their tank's running as empty as yours. Yep, come on. Unless you're getting cold feet. Hardly. You've got 30 seconds. Smack the timer when you're ready. Go! Holy shit. The crowd cheered and Kashan fed off their enthusiasm. In response, Maddie leaned back and tapped her finger on the table, feigning impatience. He met her eyes, grinned, and continued his performance. His stabbing motion got faster as he went, the point narrowly missing each of his fingers. Stabs, strong enough to drive the knife a millimeter or two into the table, were good if you wanted to put on a show. And of course, giving the spectators a show was part of the fun. You might be going fast enough to put on a show, but you're not going fast enough to win. How'd I do? 16 sets, if I counted correctly. Whoa. I couldn't do 16. That's how many Maddie beat me with. Is she gonna lose? No, she's gonna kick his arse. Feeling good about that result? Certainly am. Rightio then. Watch closely. Oh, I will. 16. 1. 3. 7. Ooh. 11. Oh, she's nervous now. 15. Ooh, she got it. Told ya, she's unbeatable. Is it magic? She could cheat if she wanted to. Definitely not, she's just that good. Poor guy. He didn't know what he was getting into. Sorry, mate. You beat me fair and square. I'm pretty impressed. I aim to please. I'll be taking those hours now, if you don't mind. Yeah, sure. How does this work? Huh? Just like this. You won't feel a thing. Kishan felt a brief tightness in his chest, and for just a moment the tip of Maddie's finger burned white hot. What the fuck? Can't beat entropy. Anytime you do an energy transfer, there's some amount of energy lost to heat. Ow! Shit! Someone in the crowd laughed. Sorry, I lied. It's done now, though. Alright. Does anyone else dare to compete with me? Come on, looking for some actual decent opposition here. I'll take any challenge. Even if it's chess or something. Any challenge? I challenge you. Who's that? To get everyone a drink. Rounds on me. I didn't realize you were watching. Oof. There wasn't anything happening upstairs and I got bored. Right. So, you took some hours from Kishan, huh? Yeah, I did. Do you feel good about that? Che. Do you? I won them fair and square. He didn't know what he was getting into. There's an obvious power imbalance here that you're exploiting. Che isn't one to let you forget responsibilities come with power. He knew the rules. That doesn't change anything. You led him to believe that he'd get some extra time. And? Barring a miracle on his part, that absolutely wasn't going to happen. doesn't matter. He's just passing through. A couple hours won't make any difference. Maddie, I'm disappointed in you. Our patrons respect us. We need to earn that respect by treating them with respect ourselves. This is not respectful or dignified. Cheating vulnerable passer-throughs out of their time. We're above that. We're better than that. I don't care whether you think it's dishonest or not. I want you to give that poor man his time back. Don't pout. This is serious. I feel like a broken record saying this, but while I understand your intentions are good, you can't keep doing these things. It's all for you. If you really want to do this for me, find another way. This isn't worth it, Maddie. It breaks my heart to see you like this, and I know that you're trying your hardest. But this really, truly is not worth sacrificing your own self-respect over. Everyone here respects you, but you gambling with hours just cheapens that. I'll give the hours back. Shame, I was pretty great with the knife. Still not as good as me. That was pretty close. Alright. I guess Maddie's been doing this for a while then, huh? Alright, I think this is a pretty good stopping point for now. We started off with a lot of reading, but we found out that Maddie has some unorthodox methods of getting back her time. But yeah, this is getting a little more intense, and geez, I did not expect the knife game. So, I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to take care of yourself, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.